She stopped for gas. No badge. No backup. Just a black woman alone in Alabama until a cop's boot knocked her to the ground. What happened next? The country exploded. And she? She didn't fight back. She rewrote the rules of power. It was a July afternoon in Rosepine Junction, Alabama, and the sun blazed like fire over the red dirt roads. No wind. No clouds. Only the droning of cicadas drilling through the heavy, suffocating air. Beside an old, weathered gas station, its sign missing 2 letters, the price board swaying with each distant engine rumble, a matte black SUV rolled slowly into the lot. Celeste Harmon stepped out. 44 years old, FBI regional director for the Gulf South, though she looked like any woman on a solo road trip across America, faded jeans, a thin khaki jacket, sunglasses hiding eyes sharp enough to have seen both the jungles of Colombia and the war rooms of D.C. No badge. No escort. Just her, and the exhaustion of hours spent driving through abandoned cotton fields. She inserted the pump nozzle into the tank, pressed the grade. The slow hiss of gasoline flowing through the hose sounded like a countdown to something about to snap. At the far end of the lot, a local police cruiser idled steadily. No one stepped out. No lights. No reason. Celeste didn't turn around, but one quick glance in the side mirror, just a flick, was enough to send a quiet tension rippling through her body like a drawn bowstring. The door of the cruiser creaked open. A tall, broad-shouldered man with a buzz cut stepped out. Troy Keenan, 40, Deputy Sheriff of Pine County. His mirrored sunglasses caught the sun, hiding his eyes but not the posture of power. He walked across the gravel, each step of his police boots crunching like a sentence being handed down. Celeste didn't turn. Just pump the gas. Then leave, she told herself. But he kept coming. His voice dragged like stale whiskey. Where you off to in such a hurry, ma'am? Heading home, she replied plainly. No attitude. No submission. License? She handed it over, just the license. No badge. No trigger. Avoiding escalation. Avoiding power in the wrong place, at the wrong time. But to Keenan, she didn't need to do anything wrong. Just being a black woman standing somewhere he didn't like was reason enough. You got an attitude, he growled. Celeste said nothing. Not out of fear, but because she knew one word would be twisted into justification. And she was right. The kick came out of nowhere, like a snare sprung from the ground. His boot slammed into her left shin, just below the knee. The sound wasn't loud, but it cracked through the air like breaking glass. Celeste collapsed onto the gravel. Her knee burst open. The skin on her left hand tore. She didn't scream. Didn't plead. She swallowed the pain in silence, holding onto a dignity no boot could break. What she didn't know was that behind the gas pump, a teenager named Caleb Shaw, 15 years old, was holding his phone, recording everything. No filters. No cuts. Just a woman kicked to the ground in broad daylight. And 3 minutes later, the entire country would see it. Pain throbbed through her calf, but Celeste Harmon didn't move. She lay on her side atop the searing gravel, her bleeding hand bracing against the ground, tiny stones digging into her palm. The smell of gasoline, blood, and scorched pavement mixed in the heat, a bitter reminder, you are no one. Just a black woman kicked to the ground at a gas station. But Celeste never believed that. She closed her eyes for a few seconds, not from pain, but to take inventory. Knee bleeding, wrist swollen, but nothing broken. Breathing steady. Heart still beating. Still intact. More importantly, still in control. She pressed her hand to the ground and began to rise, slow and steady. No shaking. No panic. The movements of someone who had crawled out from enemy fire in Bogota, who had dragged injured comrades out of gunfire in Matamoros. The posture of someone who didn't survive by chance, but by grit sharpened over 2 decades on the front lines of justice. Troy Keenan was already walking back to his car, not even glancing back, as if she were garbage he'd kicked off the curb. "Cold," he muttered, half smirking. "That's where you belong." She stood upright, brushed the dirt from her sleeve. In that moment, she was no longer the woman who got knocked down. She was Director Celeste Harmon, the same woman who'd orchestrated Operation Skyfall, the takedown of a cross-border drug cartel. The same woman who once stood in a federal war room, pointed at a map, and declared, "We start here, and we cut off the head." But she didn't need to prove that now. She walked back to her SUV, favoring her legs slightly, but never leaning on the vehicle, never letting the injury turn her into a victim. The car was still warm. The fuel needle ticked slightly upward. She caught a glimpse in the mirror, Caleb Shaw, still standing there, phone in hand, eyes wide with fear and something that looked like fury. Their eyes met. No thank you. No explanation. Just a small nod from her, "I see you. You saw me. Now let the world see." She opened the door, eased into the driver's seat, tilted her head to release the tension in her neck. Her right hand brushed against the pocket on her chest, where a small steel badge still rested. She didn't take it out. Because today, Celeste didn't need the FBI to define her. 3 minutes later, the video hit TikTok. No filters. No music. Just 23 raw seconds of truth. A woman kicked down. No screams. No resistance. But in her eyes as she stood back up, something sharper than any weapon, an unbreakable will. And this was just the beginning. It wasn't an image. It was an image mimicking code. Celeste ran a deep decryption layer, and what surfaced made her go still. An audio recording. A man's voice, mixed with the faint clink of glassware. "We don't need to eliminate her. Just let her believe she's been abandoned. Tank the trust, suspend her, and the rest is just a media game." A second voice followed, deeper, with a mocking edge. "And if she keeps pushing? Then Sheridan will handle it. Like she's done before. Trask. And someone else, unidentified." Celeste clenched her fists. But they didn't tremble. Not this time. She opened an encrypted channel and forwarded the recording to Darius, along with a short message. "Trask's in. But there's another. Trace voice print." But she didn't stop there. To raise the stakes, Celeste set a bait file, a fake report tagged as an investigation into a fabricated military contract between the Jefferson Police Department and a non-existent private security firm. The report was left exposed on a secondary server. If the other one was truly monitoring her, as the warning suggested, they would bite. She titled the file, Project Hollowgate, a name tempting enough to spark curiosity. Celeste exhaled quietly, eyes drifting toward the fog-gray sky. This wasn't just a police matter anymore. This was politics. And she had just moved her first pawn in a brand new game. News travels faster than wildfire. Less than 3 hours after Celeste sent the audio file implicating Gideon Trask, another event occurred, not through email, not through any encryption, but by the sound of the back door being pried open at 2:26 a.m. The wooden cabin on the edge of the woods outside Rosepine Junction, Celeste's temporary safe house, was only ever meant to be a data relay point. No personal belongings, no identifiers. Just one old table, an encrypted laptop, and 3 hidden cameras watching from the shadows. 3 men entered. No uniforms. No masks. One tall and thin, holding a flashlight mounted on a stun baton. The other 2 carried black duffels, looked like movers, but moved with surgical precision. They weren't looking for money. They were after the one thing Celeste had hidden well, the secondary drive containing Project Hollowgate. "Check thoroughly. That drive's got to be here somewhere," barked the bald one, flashlight sweeping across the walls. Another one chuckled under his breath. "Who does she think she is? Some FBI broad who thinks she can change the system." The third man, the loudest, rummaging through drawers, muttered a line Celeste would never forget. "She's just a black bitch." Who gives a damn if she disappears? None of them knew. Every word, every move was being recorded by 3 cameras hidden in a lampshade, an air vent, and a nameless painting in the corner. None of them realized the decoy folder with empty files on the table was just bait. And none of them saw that Celeste was sitting just 2 doors away, fully alert, finger hovering over a remote trigger. As one of them stepped toward the hallway door, approaching the room where the real drive was hidden, Celeste pressed the button. A signal was sent to Darius Vance, and within seconds, 3 federal agents burst through the back door. Flashlights hit their faces. "Don't move. On your knees, hands behind your head." The one who'd spat out that slur about Celeste was the first to hit the ground. He didn't resist, because he knew the game was over. The entire 4-minute, 38-second recording, complete with his exact words, "She's just a black bitch. Who gives a damn?" was extracted by Celeste and sent that same night to Jessa Vaughn, an independent journalist once sued for investigating Conrad Ellison's campaign fund. No notes. No background. Just a single line. "If you still dare to speak, now's the time." By morning, the clip had gone live on Citadel Report, a platform with no ads, no algorithmic filters. Below the video, 1 stark caption. "They thought she was nobody." The internet erupted. Within 6 hours, the hashtag She Let Them Speak had surged into the top 3 trends on Twitter US. From that point on, silence was no longer an option. Celeste didn't take interviews. She stayed in the shadows, quietly watching the board begin to flip. The game had changed, and now they were the ones being watched. The Fairwood Federal Courthouse was packed by 7:45 a.m. sharp. Not a single empty seat. Reporters, the public, and civil oversight groups had all gathered. Not to witness a routine case, but to see Troy Keenan, the deputy sheriff who thought he could kick a black woman in broad daylight and walk away, finally face justice. Seated next to Keenan was attorney Samuel Prescott, a seasoned courtroom brawler known for flipping arguments like playing cards. From the outset, Prescott didn't attack the incident. He attacked Celeste Harmon, labeling her a politically motivated operative and calling the gas station incident a staged performance designed to entrap a working officer. "We all know Ms. Harmon isn't your average citizen," Prescott began, his tone like a philosophy lecture. "She's a regional FBI director. She's led operations that directly challenged local law enforcement. Are we truly expected to believe the events of that day are as simple as a 4-minute viral clip suggests?" Whispers rippled through the courtroom. A few jurors exchanged glances. A single kick was now being framed as federal policy. Sensing momentum, Prescott pressed on. Could this all be part of a larger scheme, an effort to exert federal pressure on Midwestern law enforcement? At that moment, Celeste was nowhere to be seen. The witness chair remained empty. Murmurs rose again. "She's not showing up?" Then, at exactly 9:27 a.m., the rear courtroom doors creaked open. Celeste Harmon stepped in. No badge. No security detail. No introduction. Just a high-collared black coat, neatly tied hair, and a small silver USB drive in her hand. No one spoke. Prescott broke off mid-sentence. Even Keenan held his breath. Celeste walked to the front, calmly handed the USB to federal prosecutor Ariana Quill. New evidence. Unedited audio. Real voices. No edits. Quill turned to the judge. "Your Honor, permission to play this recording." The large courtroom screen lit up. The audio began. First came Keenan's voice, cold, familiar. "Who does she think she is? Just a black bitch. Nobody gives a damn." A second later, Sheridan Pike, sheriff of Benton County. "As long as the cameras don't catch it, I'll take care of the rest." In under 30 seconds, the room turned from murmuring to frozen. Every defense. Every theory. Gone like dust in the wind. Keenan went pale. Prescott bowed his head, flipping through his files like he wanted to vanish. No one believed anymore that this was some setup. Celeste said nothing more. She simply stood still, letting those who once dismissed her as nobody reveal themselves to the entire nation. And as she turned to step down from the witness stand, a single clap echoed from the back row. Then another. Until the entire courtroom rose. As for Keenan, he kept his head down, fists clenched, but this time there was nowhere left to hide. No one left to blame. Just one sentence, now etched into the ruin of his career and name. She's nobody. No. She was everything he could never face: truth, intellect, and justice. That night, inside a small wooden cabin near the southern edge of the Tuscaloosa woods, Celeste Harmon opened her laptop and lit up 3 screens at once. Each screen a slice of a massive snake, a complex laundering network cloaked behind political PACs, private security firms, and seemingly innocent contracts with local governments. Marcus Vance had sent her a bundle of unreleased financial records, fund transfers from Valor Reform PAC to 3 strategic consulting companies in Arkansas, Kentucky, and Georgia. From there, the money flowed into Horizon Tactical Solutions, the firm that Sheridan Pike had awarded a $1.2 million contract to provide rapid response training for Magnolia County Sheriff's Department. But what left Celeste frozen was the final signature: Ashton M. Wells, senior aide in Senator Ronan Vale's office. Vale, Celeste whispered. That name had appeared in a confidential recording from the previous year, where an unnamed politician discussed controlling the media fallout after an incident involving a white officer and a black woman. She enlarged the signature, cross-referencing it with a 2022 campaign finance document. A match. No doubt. Ronan Vale wasn't just a sponsor of Sheridan Pike and Troy Keenan, he was the architect of a power network manipulating both information and money. Then came a knock on the cabin door. Not rhythmic. Not forest noise. Celeste drew her weapon quietly, pressed her back to the wall, and activated the infrared camera. A young woman stood outside, hooded, under light rain. Her hands were raised. My name's Alondra. I work in accounting at Horizon. I have something you need. Celeste opened the door, checked carefully, and let her in. Alondra pulled out a small, plastic-wrapped hard drive, her hands trembling. They forced me to forge the contracts, Alondra whispered. I heard them talking about a meeting, where Vale said clearly, if that Harmon woman is still breathing by next month, we'll have lost control of the story. Celeste looked at the young woman, no older than 25, with eyes that held both understanding and caution. Are you willing to testify? Celeste asked. Alondra bit her lip. If I don't speak now, I never will. That was the breaking point Celeste had been waiting for 3 long weeks. With the drive in hand, she immediately transmitted the data to Marcus and Denise. Within 12 hours, the financial maps, contract chains, and media directives all converged onto a single name, Ronan Vale. And when a secret video recorded by Alondra, showing Vale laughing at a private dinner, saying, "We don't need to put out the fire, we just have to control the wind," was released exclusively through Citadel Insight, the U.S. media landscape erupted. Hashtags #control the wind and #expose Vale skyrocketed to the #1 trending spot on Twitter in just 36 minutes. No one questioned who was behind it anymore. Celeste knew, from here on, the game wasn't about her. It was about a system whose mask had just begun to crack. The sky cast a pale gold over the pine ridges surrounding Windbreak Bluff, a remote cliffside over 40 miles south of Montgomery. Once a wartime field training site, now it served as neutral ground for exchanges no one dared record. Celeste Harmon stood still beside her black SUV, clutching a leather case containing the USB that could dismantle an entire security empire. 12 feet across from her stood Ronan Vale, CEO of Sentinel Core Solutions, a man with a voice slick as motor oil and eyes that never flinched in the face of risk. "What do you want?" Ronan asked bluntly. "If it's money, I can." "You still think money fixes everything?" Celeste cut in, her voice rough. "What I want is justice. And today, you're going to sign it." She pulled from her coat a formal agreement, the termination of all private prison contracts, the creation of a restitution fund for victims of unlawful detention within his network, and a commitment to testify publicly before the Congressional Ethics Committee. Ronan glanced at the papers, then at the USB resting atop the SUV's hood. Inside, a video of a covert meeting between him and Senator Conrad Ellison, plotting how to conceal millions in illicit PAC contributions. The wind picked up. His bodyguards took a quiet step back, perhaps realizing the power had shifted entirely to the woman standing before them. "You don't understand the consequences," Ronan hissed. "You can't beat the system." Celeste stepped forward, unblinking. "I don't need to beat it. I just need the light. And you are the one who's going to flip the switch." Silence held for nearly a minute. Then, with a hand heavy as stone, Ronan signed. Before the ink could dry, Celeste transmitted a digital copy of the signed document to the Polaris ledger via satellite phone. Within moments, the first headline dropped. "Breaking, Sentinel Corps CEO agrees to testify on civil detention infrastructure." The standoff at the bluff ended without a shot, without blood. But for those who witnessed it, it marked the first time a security titan had bowed, not to force, but to a woman who held what he never could, truth and courage. And in that moment, Celeste knew, the battle wasn't over. But she would never fight it alone again. As night fell over Ash Ridge Hill, the Senate building glowed in cold, sterile white, the flickering light of a government in upheaval. National media outlets reported the breaking news. Senator Conrad Ellison, long seen as untouchable for over 3 decades, had officially been federally indicted on charges of money laundering, obstruction of justice, and collusion with unlawful corporate entities. Celeste Harmon sat alone in her small office in Pinehurst, the light from her monitor casting a calm but sharp glow across her face. On the desk before her lay the final file she needed to sign before stepping down as regional FBI director, not because she was forced out, but because she had finished the mission in a way no one in the system dared to attempt. Sheridan Pike, former sheriff of Rosepine Junction, was arrested during a closed-door meeting at Sentinel Corps' headquarters. Cameras caught her attempting to destroy financial documents, but the evidence had already been cloned and stored across multiple encrypted drives. Troy Keenan, once arrogant enough to kick Celeste to the ground at a gas station, now sat hunched in court with no defense. The judge's 20-year sentence rang out not as punishment, but as release. For the victims. And for justice itself. But Celeste didn't celebrate. She entered a new chapter. Together with Darius Vance and attorney Ariana Quill, she founded an independent organization called Integrity Toolkit, not a government agency, but a civilian engine. A machine of transparency, built to train everyday people how to track and expose abuse of power, from gathering digital evidence and analyzing political finances to legally lobbying for change. "I've spent my whole life cleaning up the aftermath," Celeste said at the first press conference for Integrity Toolkit. "Now it's time to give people the tools to stop it from happening in the first place." There were no fireworks at that press conference. No applause. No national broadcast. But in a small community center in Greenville, Alabama, a group of teachers, nurses, students, and truck drivers sat quietly as she spoke about public data access, the FOIA law, and how to tell the difference between a justice institution and a power network disguised as law. They didn't see a former FBI director. They saw a woman who had once been kicked to the ground at a gas station and stood back up, not to retaliate, but to hold the door open for others. A new southern autumn was coming. And this time, the wind didn't carry threats, it carried the sound of hope organized into action. Celeste knew the fight never truly ends. But now, she wasn't alone anymore. 6 months after Integrity Toolkit officially launched, Celeste Harmon returned to where it all began, the roadside gas station in Rosepine Junction, Alabama. The air was crisp. Fall leaves floated down gently, laying a golden veil across the concrete ground that had once witnessed a brutal kick. But now, that ground was no longer a place of humiliation. It was a place of memory and beginning. On a small brick wall near the gas pumps, a bronze plaque had been installed. The inscription, etched deep into the metal, read, Here, one was struck down and stood up. Not to strike back, but to lead. A young girl, maybe 12, with a purple backpack, paused to read it. She turned to her mother and asked softly, "Mom, did that really happen here?" The woman nodded. "It did. And because of it, you now know you have the right to speak the truth." Celeste stood at a distance. She didn't walk over. She didn't want attention. This wasn't her story anymore. It belonged to those who would never again be silenced. The campaign she'd launched, Every Voice Matters, was spreading across the Deep South. A traveling workshop series held in schools, churches, and even post offices, teaching people how to legally record incidents, file official complaints, safeguard personal data, and, when necessary, stop a corrupt network before it became policy. You didn't have to wait to be knocked down to take action. You didn't need a title. You didn't need a badge. All you needed was courage at the right moment. At a training in Mobile, an older black man in a janitor's uniform raised his hand and asked, "If I get stopped in the street, just because I look different, what can I do?" Celeste didn't hesitate. "Record it. Preserve it. Send it to us. And know this time, you're not alone." She knew justice didn't live inside courthouse walls. It lived in the phone camera of a brave kid. In the file someone refused to shred. In the silence broken by an ordinary voice. She had once believed that change only came from the top. But no, change begins at street level. At the very place you were knocked down, if you have the courage to get back up and keep walking. A soft wind blew across Rosepine Junction. The old gas station was still open. Travelers still stopped to fuel up, still grabbed cheap coffee from inside. But now, that place stood as a reminder that truth, no matter how small, can shift the course of a nation. And if anyone ever asked, what can one kick really change? Tell them, a whole movement.